West Ham 0, Manchester City 5, how the champions dismantled Pellegrini's side with their attacking patterns. But before the video starts, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss out on any of the transfer analysis, tactical analysis, fantasy football or season preview videos coming up over the next few weeks. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a like and check out the quiz question I've put in the comment section below. After Liverpool ran out 4-1 winners against Norwich on Friday, it was now up to Manchester City to show they could start the season just as well against West Ham at the London Stadium. Guardiola lined up his side in the familiar 4-3-3 with Zinchenko and Walker the fullbacks, Laporte came back in alongside Stones at centre-back, Ederson came back in goal, David Silva and Kevin De Bruyne sat ahead of Rodri, with Sterling on the left, Mahrez on the right and Gabriel Jesus starting up front. West Ham started with Fabianski in goal, Diop and Bruyne at centre-back, Cresswell and Fredericks the fullbacks, with Declan Rice and Wilshere in the centre of midfield with Lanzini just ahead of them. Antonio started on the left with Anderson on the right and the new signing Sebastian Haller started up front. Rather than sitting back in a deep defensive block from the outset, West Ham decided to press aggressively in a man-to-man pressing system when Manchester City tried to build out from the back. It was Lanzini and Haller's job to press around the box, with City's diamond being created with Ederson, Stones, Laporte and Rodri. What they would try to do, West Ham, is get the ball to be forced into Rodri where they could then press him. Whilst Haller would put pressure on the ball, Lanzini would sit off Rodri a bit, invite the pass and then try to put pressure on the Spaniard. If David Silva or Kevin De Bruyne tried to move deep to receive the ball, Rice or Wilshere would follow them, and what ended up happening a lot is Wilshere would push forward to join the front line press, whilst Rice would sit back in a slightly deeper position. It was Felipe Anderson and Antonio's job to put pressure on the fullbacks when they received the ball. If West Ham had gone for a narrow man-to-man pressing system, this would have left space for Zinchenko and Walker, and Ederson would have just played a lofted ball over the top of the press, and City would have been out of the press and could move into midfield easily. So going with Antonio and Anderson staying slightly wider in a sort of 4-4-2 shape did prevent this from happening. For this reason, City did struggle in the opening 15 minutes with West Ham's press, and this was largely because of the energy in the West Ham midfield. Wilshere and Rice were able to move out to press Silva and De Bruyne when they got onto the ball and break up the play. In possession, instead of trying to play through the back, West Ham looked to play long direct balls up to Haller so he could bring the ball down on his chest and bring the likes of Lanzini and Antonio into play. This did work well for West Ham because Haller is excellent at receiving the ball on his chest or even into feet, holding on to the ball and allowing West Ham to get up the pitch and sustain possession in City's half. What this meant was that City couldn't press West Ham high and try to win the ball back off the likes of Rice or Wilshere, because Diop and Bruyne would look to play them long balls into Haller over the top of Manchester City's midfield. Even though West Ham did have joy in the first 15 minutes against Manchester City when they pressed them high, eventually when the West Ham midfielders began to tire a little, they were a little later to engage in the press, and this allowed Manchester City to build out easier, using Zinchenko on the left hand side a lot and Walker on the opposite side, who would often move narrow to create a back three. It was Rodri's composure and vision which enabled City to play out the press and eventually dominate the midfield. Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva would position themselves high and wide of Rice and Wilshere, and what this meant was that when Rice or Wilshere engaged in the press with the front line, it would leave De Bruyne and Silva space either side of Rice. And when City with Rodri were able to play out of this press, they could play the ball into De Bruyne or Silva, who could carry the ball and transition City into West Ham's half. While Mahrez would maintain the width on the right hand side by stretching it and staying very wide, while Sterling would come in narrow from the left and play centrally behind Gabriel Jesus. City would look to isolate Aaron Cresswell on that right hand side. Mahrez would stay wide, Kevin De Bruyne or Rodri would look to play a ball outside to Mahrez, and Kyle Walker would race down overlapping Mahrez, waiting for Mahrez to play the ball inside of Aaron Cresswell, and this was where City's first goal came from. Kyle Walker's low cross to the near post, which was turned in by Gabriel Jesus. City's attacking patterns and movements in the West Ham half caused the West Ham defence all sorts of problems. When one of City's wide players such as Zinchenko, Walker or Mahrez received the ball on the flank, Silva or De Bruyne would look to make an underlapping run in between the fullback and centre-back. City's ability to make them runs in behind the back line was the key reason why they were able to open up West Ham's defence. Sterling would often make late runs from deep in behind the centre-backs, and with players like Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva moving into the half spaces, they were able to pick these passes, and it became easy for City to break down West Ham's structured system and get in behind them, and this is where City's goals came from. In the first half, Lanzini playing slightly more advanced than Rice and Wilshere enabled West Ham to have a transition player. The ball could be played into him and he could dribble the ball forward into the Manchester City half and start West Ham's attacks. However, certainly in the second half, West Ham lacked runners in behind Haller. Because he's a deep lying target man sort of forward, he's not going to run in behind, so often what would happen is the ball would be played into him, he'd bring it down, but none of the West Ham midfielders were willing to make any penetrating runs in behind the City backline, so it's easy for Laporte and Stones to defend. West Ham did have some joy from deep crosses, so they didn't have enough of these. Cresswell and Fredericks didn't get in these positions often enough, so they weren't able to take full advantage. So overall, City showed why they are the champions. They can easily break down a side like West Ham, who first want to press them aggressively. They can play out with the addition of Rodri, who's really enabled City to play through a press. But even when West Ham sat deep, City have the players like De Bruyne and Silva, and the runners in behind such as Mahrez and Sterling to be able to break through a defence like West Ham's. West Ham certainly looked more promising than last year, and I think now with the addition of Haller, West Ham should be able to use those deep crosses as a very good offensive weapon in games against smaller teams such as Norwich, who struggled to defend aerial duels in their own box. Sterling was the man of the match, though I thought Gabriel Jesus, Kevin De Bruyne and Zinchenko all had very good games, and Declan Rice was West Ham's standout player. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and check out the quiz question in the comment section below.